What's up, everybody? Corey Hughes, Bloody History. So we're not going to finish that Permindex document. It was a bunch of bullshit. A lot of it's bullshit. So it was a typical disinformation document. We're not going to finish it. Because as I'm reading through it, I'm like, this is nonsense. This is bullshit. Anybody who blames the British over the Jews is ridiculous and stupid. So I'm not even going to finish it. There's a lot of good information on Permindex, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to get some of that at some other time. But today what we're going to do is I'm on this theme of Reinhard Gehlen, especially on Bloody History World War II. If you're not subscribed to Bloody History World War II, what the fuck are you waiting for? It's probably one of the better shows out there on the interwebs today. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple days and we're going to talk about Reinhard Gehlen. Specifically, we're going to cover this biographic sketch on Reinhard Gehlen from the CIA library. Hosted at the jewishvirtuallibrary.org, believe it or not. They have a whole section on Reinhard Gehlen. So, here we go. Biographic sketch on General Reinhard Gehlen. General Reinhard Gehlen is a professional military and intelligence officer. Until his retirement on the 30th of April 1968, he was president of the BND, the West German Federal Intelligence Service, as well as chief of its predecessor organizations formed at the end of World War II. General Gehlen was born on 3rd April 1902 in Erfurt. He currently lives in Berg on the Starnberg Lake near Munich. He finished his formal schooling in 1920 and entered the military service directly. He received his commission as second lieutenant in 1923 and served his initial tours of duty in the Horse Artillery. He married in 1931, and in 1935 he attended the War Academy in Berlin. At that time, he held the rank of captain. By 1939, and shortly before the outbreak of World War II, he was promoted to major. He participated in the Polish campaign, but by 1940, he was transferred to a headquarters post. At that time, he became an aide to General Halder, who was chief of the general staff. He was promoted to lieutenant colonel in 1941 and became chief of the Fremde Heer Ost in 1942. That's the Foreign Armies East. It was the section of the German High Command charged with responsibility for charting the enemy order of battle on the Eastern Front. It was essentially an evaluation unit and worked closely with the Abwehr. It did engage in line-crossing operations as the war progressed, however. Gehlen received his promotion to colonel soon after taking over Fremde Heer Ost, and by 1944 was promoted to brigadier general. In the course of preparing estimates on enemy order of battle, he reached the conclusion as early as 1943 that the German cause on the Eastern Front was lost, and his continued pessimistic evaluations led to a reprimand from Hitler, and in the last days of the war he was relieved of command by order of Hitler. Long before that day, General Gehlen had already consulted with senior members of his staff and made plans to continue their efforts against the Russians after the inevitable capitulation of the German army. But in cooperation with the American army, General Gehlen consequently cached his files in the Bavarian Alps and withdrew to that area in the final days of the war. He subsequently surrendered to the Americans, and after his initial POW debriefings, he presented his plans for the continued collection of order of battle information of the Soviet armies. General Gehlen was motivated by his strong view that the position of the Soviet army so deep in Europe constituted a real threat to Western civilization. His views were so strong that he was able to convince his captors of these views. He was then flown back to Washington in 1946 for further debriefings, and the decision was made at the G2 level to allow General Gehlen to reform his unit and to permit him to engage in a collection effort against the Soviet army in Eastern Europe. Some, and then something is redacted here, were appropriate for this effort. General Gehlen succeeded in reforming his unit and retrieving most of his files. He operated under G2 sponsorship from 46 till 49 when the CIA assumed responsibility for the Gehlen organization, and it was then known. From 1949 until 1956, General Gehlen devoted his full energies to legalizing his organization as the West German Federal Intelligence Service. He achieved this goal in March of 1956 and thereby became its first president. He became directly responsible to the Chancellor's office. After legalizing, he strove to develop his organization into a worldwide intelligence service having collection capabilities and liaison on a worldwide basis. He has gone a long way toward accomplishing this goal. As a personality, General Gehlen still remains essentially a professional military officer in habits and attitudes, though he never entered in active duty after World War II. He is, however, a lieutenant general in the reserve. At one time, he was an accomplished horseman, though he no longer permits himself this luxury, primarily because of the time considerations. He's a family man and has 4 children. It is believed General Gehlen leads a quiet life outside of his official duties. In all things, he is essentially conservative. He rarely entertains and he does not drink. His English is fluent, and he is socially poised and very much at ease among senior American officials. Since his retirement, he has been engaged in writing his memoirs and compiling a history of the BND. General Gehlen was succeeded on May 1st, 1968 by General Gerhard Wessel, his adjutant in Fronde Horst Ost, who was instrumental in assisting in the formation of the Gehlen organization. Wessel has served with the BND, the West German Ministry of Defense, and the NATO Military Committee in Washington and in Brussels. All right, then we move on to some general descriptors. Physical descriptors as of 1958, 5 foot 8 inches and a half tall, weighed 145 to 160 pounds, blue eyes, dark blonde, balding hair, build medium, wears glasses, and he looks young for his age. Everything else is redacted. His parents are all redacted, their date of births, family is all redacted, children's names are redacted. Chronological information, 1906 to 1920, he graduated from some earlier high school. 1920, April, entered military service. 1923, commissioned 2nd lieutenant. 1928, promoted 1st lieutenant. 1931, October, married, looks like Myrta Gehlen on October 11th, 1931. 33, traveled to Rome, Italy on leave. 33, in the fall to January of 35, he attended the War Academy in Berlin. 1934, he was promoted to captain. 1937, he traveled to Finland and Sweden on leave. 37, 38, first general staff officer at the 10 Department Fortifications. From 37 to 45, he was in the German Wehrmacht troop duty, Poland, France, Yugoslavia, Greece, Russia. 38 to 39, he was a battery commander. 39, promoted to major. September to November 39, he was in the 213th Infantry Division. November 39 to July of 40, he was part of the OKH Gruppe Landschaftsdienung, Chief of Fortifications in the General Staff. July 40th to November, July and November of 1940, aide adjutant to Chief of General Staff Halder. November 40 to April 42, Chief Gruppenleiter of the OST, that's the Eastern Operations. 1945, Chief of the EBT, Fremont hier Ort, promoted Colonel on December 42, promoted Brigadier General December 44, dismissed by special order of Hitler on the 9th of April, and then he was a prisoner of war, U.S. forces, in May of 45. He arrived at the 12th Army Group in 27th of May. Prisoner of war sent to U.S. at the end of 45. Prisoner of war returned from the States on June 5th of 1946. And since then has cooperated with the U.S. Intelligence Service. And 1946, several trips to Switzerland, Austria, Italy, Spain, and France. Subject documented as having lived in Washington, D.C. during this period. They have a bunch of travel records for him. Occasional reference to this new something which would indicate that either subject or his father combined their surname with that of subject's mother, fairly common practice in Germany. His father was Gehlen von von Herwig. Reinhard Gehlen von Herwig. So Reinhard Gehlen is a shortened version of his name. All right. Moving on. More various passport documentation. Nothing overly important here. All right. Incoming classified message CIA, dated January of 1952. Globke informed he plans to discuss with intelligence matters on January 26th in effort to clearly define duties and functions existing German intelligence service, including Zipper. Globke hopes, therefore, to minimize present friction between intelligence chiefs. Reaction of Dr. Gumbel and Dr. Grau, who had made brief survey of Zipper personnel. We got to find this operation or project Zipper. And finance is completely favorable. Both received Toth as background leaders and salaries being paid which were in accordance with German civil service. Globke plans to have careful estimate made of German financial contribution to Zipper. Resulting budget will be submitted to Finance Minister and Special Bundestag Finance Committee. Finance Minister already informed concerning Zipper. No German intelligence technician yet appointed for quadripurate working committee to advise on contractual agreements. Globke claimed he unaware such person needed and made tentative suggestion that Radke might be suitable and could be supported by Zipper staff if required. Security information, secret classified, to the chief, from the chief of station in Frankfurt. Subject: General Operational Specific Progress Report, Zipper, transfer to the Federal Republic. We've had an excellent opportunity to debrief Dr. Horn during his 2-day stay in Munich prior to his 3-week leave to Austria. The information received from him, plus what we have learned from Drs. Grau and Gumbel, Globke's administrative and financial experts studying Zipper, and recent discussions with Utility has given us a rather lucid picture of Zipper developments and progress to legalize themselves with the Bundesrepublik towards becoming the German intelligence service. The team of Grau and Gumbel completed a 3-day visit on 18th of July 1952. After an overall introduction by Utility, the following subjects were discussed in detail: personnel matters, relationship and cooperation with other governmental authorities, cover and legalization problems, basic questions of financing and administrative handling, accounting procedure, budget planning, examination of financial matters, insurance matters, travel costs, disposal costs, procurement of consultants and specialists, procurement of foreign currencies, property and financial assets, vehicles and motorization. Apparently, Zipper has prepared the background material of the points listed above and has now been asked to prepare the subjects and contents of this material in a format acceptable to the government. We've asked Utility to provide us with copies of the reports they will turn over to Bonn. After considering the problem of transfer from all points of view, we have decided not to interfere or attempt to influence Redacted in their scheduled program. We have advised Utility to this effect, that which he concurs. Utility is an obvious pseudonym here, all capital. All concerned feel that our involvement may be considered as unwarranted interference in what is considered a basic internal national problem, and we might do more harm than good. We've given assurance of assistance when it may be required or necessary, and have asked Utility to keep us current with developments. Finance Minister Schaefer and Mr. Blank have been officially briefed by Redacted that he intends to integrate Zipper into the Federal Republic under the jurisdiction of the Chancellery as the centralized national intelligence service. It is considered that the above two individuals are the only ones who need know this for the present time, and specifically to assist in the financial and personal planning. The only other members of the Bonn government especially involved are briefed members of Globke's office. Redacted plans to brief the other ministries and Bundestag committee after ratification of the treaties. Blank has also been advised by Redacted to visit the Zipper installation in the near future to discuss mutual problems. We intend to spend some time with Blank during his visit here and hope to get a clearer picture of the possible solutions to the complex personnel problem, particularly of the military slots confronting Zipper. So Zipper obviously has something to do with the formation of the BND. The actual transfer of Zipper does not appear complicated and is envisaged as follows. Upon the effective date of the entry into force of the conventions, Redacted intends to publish a order announcing the establishment of a centralized national intelligence service under the Chancellery. An executive order or appointment is not necessary, since under German law, the Chancellor may create or establish an organization under his jurisdiction which does not have executive powers. The Bundestag has no jurisdiction over such an establishment. Following Redacted's acceptance, the only other thing necessary is to receive governmental approval of the budget requirements for the intelligence service. The budget requirements need only be submitted to the Bundeshaushaltausch Budget Committee for approval. Preparations for this are underway in the form of studies to be submitted by Grau and Gumbel. Redacted controls the Budget Committee, since the CDU coalition controls 15 of 24 votes, and the SPD coalition has the remaining 9. Only a simple majority is necessary to carry the motion. Memorandum to Redacted from Redacted, subject Zipper/Nazi elements. During General Gehlen's 11th of December presentation before the EDC Parliamentary Committee, he used a graphic chart to show the extent and number of former SS and SD personnel within the Zipper complex. And then we have a bunch of numbers here. Total ex-Waffen-SS, a bunch of ex-police officers. The top wage scale is 1. In terms of SS and SD percentage, Zipper claims they are better off than most West German ministries. To EE, subject former Nazi and SS membership in Zipper. Over the years, there have been numerous allegations made by various individuals and factions within the West German government to the effect that Zipper's ranks are heavily weighted with former Nazi and SS types. In view of the fact that Nazism in the German government appears no longer to be a problem of such primary concern, it would seem that a report dealing with the incidence of these elements within Zipper might well be made at this time by way of finalizing the matter. Study of POBs, redacted files which contain background data on nearly 600 Zipperites, about half of the known total of Zipper membership, reveals 76 Zipperites known to have been either former SS, SD, SA members, NSDAP members, war crime offenders, and or a combination of the same. The 76 who fall into the above category represent about 13% of Zipperites whose background is known to us. It will be remembered, redacted, that Utility gave us a copy of a chart used in his presentation before the EDC Parliamentary Committee, 11th December 1953, to show the extent and number of former SS and SD personnel within the Zipper complex. A summary of these figures, which we considered a fairly accurate statement of the facts, since copies of Zipper personnel statistics are on file in redacted office, showed that 1102 Zipperites, 51 are either former Waffen-SS or Alemannia SS and SD. For comparison's sake, Utility figures that of the SS, SD, and SA, 51 out of 1102 Zipperites equals 5%. POB figures of SS, SD, and SA, 50 out of 600 Zipperites equals 8%. From the above comparison, we see that POB's records show only a 3% higher incidence of SS, SD, and SA types than did Utility's statement. In fact, from a review of our findings, we find nothing to seriously refute Zipper's claims that, in terms of SS and SD percentage, they are better off than most ministries. By way of further comparison, it is interesting to note figures recently compiled by Bonn from Berlin's Document Center records, which show that the present Bundestag has 129, or 26.5% former NSDAP members. Utility, in a memo that dated March 8, 1952, redacted, stated that of all full-time co-workers of the staffs of our organization, including district agencies, 28% of the 785 co-workers in question were former members of the NSDAP. That's the National Socialist Party. We may consider Utility's 28% figure to be fairly conservative One in view of the fact that Redacted shows up only 13% zip rights in all former Nazi categories. So a good part of the German government was made up of Nazis, as much as 30%, right? All right, back to some information on Reinhard Gehlen remarks. Former General Reinhard Gehlen, who served in Hitler's general staff as chief of the Department of Foreign Armies, reportedly currently heads a secret organization in West Germany, which evaluates intelligence from the East. When Hitler's regime collapsed in 1945, Gehlen is said to have escaped westward with most of the secret files of his department. He allegedly kept in his control many of the top secret lists of German agents planted in the Soviet Union and the eastern neighbor states, which subsequently became Soviet satellites. He supposedly had the key to the espionage network built by I can't read that. Gennaria, Himmler, and Schallenberg. The Americans reportedly took him prisoner, but not for long, because American intelligence chiefs reportedly became very impressed with him, with his ideas, and his documentation, which he was able to put at their disposal. They are said to have set him up in an office and permitted him to pick a small staff of ex-Abwehr officers, General Canaris' intelligence service, most of whom were equipped with good anti-Nazi records. Within a few weeks, Gehlen was providing excellent reports on Soviet military and political activities in the eastern something, and was subsequently permitted to expand his staff and scope of activities. As he expanded, however, many Nazis, SS, and SD men crept into his organization, where they enjoy full protection. Today, Gehlen's espionage organization is said to have agents in all parts of the world. The Americans reportedly supply the funds, which amount to Redacted a year. The former general is said to be able to multiply this to many times its original value through clever business deals. It is believed that he has already something in piling up a substantial reserve, which would something him to carry on independently should the Americans cease to support him. The material collected by Gehlen is said to be of first-class value. The interpretation of it, done by his skilled analysts at their headquarters in Munich, has impressed not only the Americans, but the Redacted and the Redacted as well. A heavy intelligence report of November 1948 states that Gehlen's organization maintains 15 to 16 outer listening posts along the borders of the Russian-occupied zone, while the organization itself is composed of between 30 and 40 general staff officers and 50 to 60 other officers. The danger of Gehlen's organization lies in the future. It has already become an immense underground power in Germany and has key men in all German government offices, in the police, newspaper, radio stations, etc. His organization has even penetrated the government's Office for the Protection of the Constitution, deemed the secret police office. Gehlen has been suggested for a position within this office, according to covert reports. In any event, for the present, his network is only using its underground paper to expand its influence still farther, gets its members in strategic positions, and cover ex-Nazis and SS men from any persecution. Gehlen himself is reportedly not ambitious for political power. He is, however, listed as a member of the Bruderschaft. He hopes supposedly is to become the intelligence chief of the European army. The many ex-Nazis and ex-officers high up in his machine, however, are regarded as ambitious and representing the real danger. All right, moving on. We have a message dated, it's hard to say. It's got a handwritten note, July 63, but that must be years later. All right. German press has reported public rumors and official denials that Reinhard Gehlen, an Army Reserve Lieutenant General, will resign this fall as director of the Federal Intelligence Service because of reaching the age of 62. Press also reported, as often before, that a possible successor would be Brigadier General Gerhard Wessel. Neither OCA nor ARMA is aware of any indications confirming rumor of Gehlen's retirement. Both believe Wessel would be a candidate for the position if rumor proved true. The current trial against alleged communist infiltrators in Gehlen's organization has received wide press coverage and will doubtless give rise to continuing criticism of Gehlen and rumors of his resignation. All right, continued biographical sketch on General Reinhard Gehlen. General Reinhard Gehlen is president of the West German Federal Intelligence Service. Born 3rd of April 1902 in Erfurt, Germany, he finished his formal schooling in 1920 and entered military service directly, receiving his commission in 1923. Attending the War Academy in Berlin in 1936, he became major in 1939 and a brigadier general in 1944. In charge of foreign armies east in 1943, he came to believe that the German cause on the Eastern Front was lost. Reprimanded by Hitler for his negative opinions, he was ultimately dismissed towards the war's end. After caching his files in Bavaria, he surrendered to the Americans. Reforming his unit, General Gehlen operated under G2 auspices from 1946 until 1949, when the CIA assumed sponsorship. The Gehlen organization was legalized as the West German Service in March of 1956. So the Gehlen organization became the BND in 56. And with that, Gehlen's disappearance into history. General Gehlen has expanded his activities to the point that his organization has been accepted as a worldwide service. Expected to retire within the next 2 or 3 years, he lives quietly with his wife in Berg on the Starnberg Lake near Munich. He speaks good English. Prepared by Admiral Rayborn, May 1965. All right, another memo dated 1978, Munich. Please convey the following utility from redacted April 17th dinner. As your American friends gather this evening to officially bid you farewell from the intelligence community, I am sure that much will be said by my American colleagues about your contribution to the intelligence field. I would join them in this expression, but would note that in the uncertain years after World War II, the contributions you personally and institutionally made to laying the foundations on which cooperation between Germany and the Western nations, particularly America, were built, may be judged in history as your greatest contribution to Western security and the cause of peace. To have been an observer and participant in that effort was for me a unique and privileged experience. End of message. Signed. Who's it signed by? Doesn't say. It's probably just redacted. Letter from Reinhard Gehlen to Richard Helms. Well, it says Mr. Helms, but it's obviously Richard Helms. Not only the United States, but also all cooperating intelligence leaders in the West complain the death of the Honorable Mr. Allen Dulles, who was all of us a symbol of seriousness and honesty in our common efforts to work for a peaceful world. It is not accidental that in the past, in order to avoid his name in written documents, we used the cover name The Gentleman. Ooh. So The Gentleman was a code name for Allen Dulles. He always proved to be not only an outstanding American official, but also a friend to Germany. During all the years, I admired his foresight, his experience, and his broad-mindedness. So I will always remember this great man as representative of the American intelligence effort during a long time. We participate in your grief. Signed, Reinhard Gehlen. Here's another letter to Mr. Helms. I want to thank you very much for your kind birthday letter and your birthday congratulations, which were forwarded to me by Heinz Herr. It was very kind of you to remember this day in spite of the pressure of your work. I can imagine that during the last months, the working conditions have been and still are difficult for your service and for yourself. My thoughts and those of my friends are with you, wishing you good success. Again, just under the present circumstances, I remember with gratitude our agreeable cooperation. With best wishes and regards to you and Mrs. Helms. Sincerely, Reinhard Gehlen. All right, here's another memorandum dated 26th of September, 1961. Memorandum for redacted. Subject, Sefton Delmer's articles on Gehlen in the Sunday Telegraph. Okay, so Sefton Delmer, if you haven't seen my documentary on the Holocaust, Sefton Delmer was the head of the British psychological warfare executive. He was the pioneer of dirty tricks propaganda for the British. He's the one who came up with all the sex work propaganda and the fact that telling the Germans that the French are banging their wives and stuff like that. He came up with all the weird sex stuff for the British. All right, his memorandum outlines the following. 1. These two articles are subtly and maliciously slanted, either as a result of British distaste for German militarists or a more sinister intent to serve communist ends. Here are a few examples. A. Delmer says that at the end of the war, Gehlen was in command of all anti-Soviet operations. He wasn't. He was in command of German military intelligence against the USSR. Then, as now, he was mainly concerned with OB, which is the East. B, for his own work, has shown him that OSS had not even begun to function in the Soviet Union by the end of the war. True, it had not, but there is a nasty implication here that Gehlen had been busily at work against the OSS and had been so successful that he knew what it was doing and what it wasn't. C, for the most of the first conversation, Gehlen was examining General Patterson, not Patterson-Gehlen. Here, Delmer is describing Gehlen's first post-war contact with U.S. intelligence. How does he know? He wasn't there. The invention is in line with Delmer's consistent attempt to show Gehlen as a very clever and very sinister. D, and it was in Washington that Gehlen made his all-important deal, the deal which was the dream of Himmler and Schellenberg, the deal which enabled him to revive a section of Hitler's general staff and lay the foundation of German rearmament at a time when such rearmament was still anathema. This is distorted and vicious. Gehlen laid the foundation for post-war German intelligence, not the general staff or armaments. E, for not only was he able to return his unit into a shadow of German general staff, but more important still, he was now in a position to supply the Americans with the kind of intelligence which would make them feel it was essential to recreate the German army to help in the defense of Europe against the Russians. The same twist here is evident. Some of Gehlen's key people were and are officers. Others were not. The model on which the organization was fashioned, naturally, the FHO or the Fremde Heer Ost of the OKW, not the general staff itself, and Gehlen's product was not diabolically altered to pit us against the Soviets or lay in the groundwork for the remilitarization of Germany. Here and elsewhere, Delmer portrays the Americans as the naive dupes of the subtle, scheming Gehlen. Delmer also charges that Gehlen's organization recruited many former SD and Gestapo members. This is an old communist canard. Most of Gehlen's people were straight G2 types. A few were Abwehr, but very few were SD or Gestapo, precisely because Gehlen knew he could not afford them politically, and also because these types were looked upon with distaste by the professional officer class. The second article starts, quote, Berlin remains the main battlefield in the war between the two rival gangs of Hitler's former Secret Service men. The main lie here is the assumption of immoral equality between East and West. This lie is basic to communist propaganda. Another lie is the Hitler's Secret Servicemen, i.e. SD and Gestapo, as noted above. As a matter of fact, some of Gehlen's key people were part of the military plot against Hitler. The two articles are in effect mischievous. Their net effect is to render the service to the East, not to the West. All right, now we have a 1961 biographical sketch of General Reinhard Gehlen. 1. General Reinhard Gehlen is the president of the West German Federal Intelligence Service. He has held this position since 31st of March 1956, when the predecessor organization became legalized. During the post-war period, and prior to the time General Gehlen headed the private intelligence organization which bore his name before becoming the present West German Federal Intelligence Service. 2. General Gehlen was born 3rd of April 1902 in Erfurt and was educated in Breslau. He entered the military service in 1920 and was commissioned in 23. His first service was in the Horse Cavalry. In 35, he attended the War Academy and subsequently became General Staff Corps officer. He was a battery commander at the outbreak of World War II and was almost immediately promoted to the rank of major. He filled a number of staff assignments, coming in close contact with Generals Halder and Husinger. By 42, he was placed in command of the Fremde Heer Ost, which was roughly the German equivalent of the American G2 intelligence operations on the German Eastern Front. He was a colonel at this time and was soon promoted to general major. His unit had both an operational and analytic function regarding Soviet Army order of battle and Eastern Front. He aroused the ire of Hitler as early as 43, when during the course of an order of battle briefing for Hitler, it was implied that the German army was facing defeat. Nevertheless, his organization continued to function effectively during the remainder of the war until General Staff Corps protection at the time when the Abwehr disintegrated. By the time the general military situation began to disintegrate, Gehlen made plans with several of his senior officers to withdraw with the files for the purpose of caching them in Bavaria. Basic plans were also laid for recontacting key personnel after the inevitable surrender in event a continuation of their work were possible. In May of 1945, and from a hideout in Bavaria, General Gehlen surrendered to the United States Army. During the course of his interrogation, he chose to reveal his ideas and plans for a continuation of his work. He and certain of his co-workers were sent to Camp Ritchie for a more detailed interrogation, and a decision was made at the G2 level to return General Gehlen to Germany and to allow him to rebuild his organization under G2 responsibility. His organization was the first located in Oberössel and later in Pullack. In 1948, the CIA requested to look into the Gehlen organization with a view to making a decision to take it over. By 49, the decision was made by the Pullack Operations Base. It was created to conduct liaison with German organization and assist them as necessary. Gehlen's work during this period to preserve the integrity of his organization from American control so that it would be politically acceptable to Bonn at the proper time. The essential American position was that of holding the German organization together so that it would be available to Bonn when they required such an organization. General Gehlen worked towards this period to achieve the legalization of his organization, which was accomplished in March of 46. Then we have a super big redaction here. And then we have General Gehlen has always enjoyed a personal relationship with Mr. Dulles and his immediate predecessors. Privileged communications have been exchanged. So, if you'll notice, in all the stuff that we've read about Reinhard Gehlen, whether it's on Bloody History of World War II or here, we have not really come across his interactions with Dulles, other than the letter to Richard Helms, wishing him condolences on Dulles' death. But here it says General Gehlen has always enjoyed a personal relationship with Mr. Dulles and his immediate predecessors. His immediate predecessor would have been, well, obviously Donovan, but you got the first couple heads of the CIA were not Dulles. And then you have a big redaction here. And then it says, General Gehlen is married and has 3 daughters and a son ranging in age from the late teens to mid-20s. One of his daughters is married to his Bonn office representative. General Gehlen appears to enjoy relatively good health despite a gallbladder or liver condition. He does not drink or smoke. It is expected that he will continue in his present position for several more years before he chooses to retire. He lives in a house on Lake Starnberg, some 10 miles south of Munich. He lives there in an inconspicuous manner as possible, as is characteristic of his conduct of official matters. And then we have a letter from Helms to Gehlen, March 22nd, 62. General Reinhard Gehlen, President of the Bundestag, blah, 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 blah. Dear General Gehlen, I wish to extend to you on the occasion of your 60th birthday my sincere congratulations. A real milestone has been reached. And with my congratulations, and I send best wishes for your good health and continued success. I look back with great pleasure on our meetings during the past years and the opportunity they afford for us to renew our friendship, and I trust the future will afford us similar occasions. Cordially, Richard Helms. So what do we have here? What can we take away from all this? What we can take away is that Reinhard Gehlen was an integral part of the intelligence community going back to 1946, right? That's a year before the CIA, which was founded by Donovan and Dulles and all these fucking cunts. Reinhard Gehlen is a name that's left out of the vast majority of of historical work. But we're gonna take some time and we're gonna really dig into Mr. Reinhard Gehlen. And this is gonna cover on both shows. This is gonna be on Bloody History and it's gonna be on Bloody History World War II. So if you haven't subscribed to Bloody History World War II, now is the time to do it. That's going to do it for today, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow.